You're going to lose sleep. You'll doubt whether it'll work. You'll stress to make ends meet. You won't finish your to-do list. You'll wonder whether you made the right call and have no way to know for years. This is what hard feels like, and that's okay. Everything worth doing is hard, and the more worth doing it is, the harder it is. The greater the payoff, the greater the hardship. If it's hard, good. It means no one else will do it. More for you.
You can't have an easy life in a great character. Show me a trust fund kid that inherited a bunch of money, and I'll show you someone mentally tortured. It's true, right? Everyone's like, your struggle, where you've come from in Plymouth, in living in poverty, to now, having stuff isn't fun. Getting stuff is fun.
There is a period in everybody's journey where they are so different because they've started to do new things that they no longer fit in with their old set of friends. But they're not sufficiently developed that they've gained their new set of friends. And they're unsure. Should I go back? Should I lean back into getting a bag in with the boys on a weekend? Is that the highest, way that I can live my life passion forward? Because that's what everybody else does. And all of my friends are taking the piss. Oh, not drinking again. Too good for us, are we? Not going out again this week. Oh, okay. Well, enjoy staying in home and reading. Fucking nerd.
Oh, it's ugly.
Yeah.
And what's funny about it is that as you're trying to fix yourself and dig yourself out of this deep hole that life, society, and you helped also, those people who you saw down there in that hole who were there with you, who are your friends and people who you counted on, because you meet the people in the same situation that you're in life. Those people become your friends. And the second you try to get out of that situation and become better, those people are in that grave, in that dungeon, just yanking at your heels, man, saying, get the fuck back. Oh, no, come on back here, motherfucker.
So you're going to feel the pain of being ostracized from the group of friends that you used to have, but you're stuck in this messy middle where you haven't yet worked out who you are on the other side of this. And that lonely chapter that's in the middle is something that I would say almost nobody that I've ever met who has gone from a place where they are to a place where they want to be hasn't gone through.
Imagine that you're in a movie, and imagine the movie begins now.
It's the hero's journey, and you're on a journey to do something, to become something, right? And what are you doing here? What's your role in the world?
So when you go home, right, and you want to start a new business, or you have a girl that you're bringing back, and your friends and your family are like, she's not going to last, or like, this isn't going to be forever. They are right. Literally every single time, except for the one time you bring your wife home. And in that time, they're all wrong, and it's the one time that fucking matters.
Of course you don't have it all together. You're not supposed to have it all together. You're not expected to have it all together. Anybody looks at you at 26, 27, 28 years old and says, hey man, what's wrong with you? How come you don't have everything figured out? They're a fool.
If you haven't gotten what you want, then you're not worthy of it, period. And that's okay. Now you can admit that you suck and improve. Better to know you're bad for a season than pretend you're good for a lifetime. You're not making as much money as you want because you're not as good as you think you are. You're not struggling from imposter syndrome. You're a student and pretending to be a teacher. No students say they feel like frauds for trying to learn. You're a fraud when you get up to teach the class, and you've never done it.
I think it's just giving yourself permission to suck. It's giving yourself permission to be unhappy. It's giving yourself permission to not achieve while you do for a long period of time. It's giving yourself permission to lose friends. It's giving yourself permission to do things that's different than people in your social circle or your age group are doing. It's giving you permission, giving yourself permission to be an exception so that you can become exceptional.
I was a fat guy trying to be a Navy SEAL now, and my life had come to this crossroads where I'm like, man, you have to go right. And no one was going right. Everybody was going left. I'm like, you have to go right. And to know the pain and suffering I was about to endure by going right, the amount of accountability and failure I was going to witness and suffer by myself alone on this journey, it was daunting.
Like the amount of times when I was on my lonely path where I was too different from the friends that I had, but not successful enough to be friends with the people that I wanted to be friends with. That's when you want people to root for you. That's when you want people to support you. Once you've already won, people are like, he's amazing, he's so good. But like, that's the time when you need it the least. And so you always have to be the person who roots for you before everyone else does.
Everyone loves you when you're throwing a party. But in the tough times, you're a bit more difficult to love. And if people stand by you then they're friends.
Until you win, effort always goes unnoticed.
Yeah.
Get used to it. No one roots for you until everyone roots for you. That's just how it works.
It takes more effort to start in the beginning, and more people are right about the fact they're like, hey, you're not going to hit it big. And guess what? A month in, you're not. But they're only measuring on months. And at 6 months, you're also not going to have hit it big yet. And they're going to be like, I'm still fucking right. And at a year, you're still not going to have hit it big. And they'll still be fucking right. And every day that you haven't hit it, they're going to feel like they were right. But they're wrong, because they're measuring in days and you're measuring in decades. It's usually a single clap in the auditorium for a very long period of time. It is a slow clap that's just you rooting for you.
Nobody bursts from their mother's womb ready for the world. Nobody bursts from their mother's womb aged and mature and wise.
If you're going through that right now, and I promise you, every single person who wants to do something with their life and has done something with their life has gone through the exact chapter that you're going through. And it's the lonely chapter. It's the chapter where you don't fit in with your own friends, but you don't have the outcomes yet to fit into a new group of friends. And you're doing this thing, you're consuming content on the internet, you're doing these free tutorials online to try and figure out how to set up a podcast and where do I host this thing? And then you're going through this and you're like, is this even worth it? Because you have no signs of success.
You're feeling isolated and alone and lonely.
The most important question to ask is, what pain do you want in your life? What are you willing to struggle for? Anything worthwhile is going to require some degree of pain and struggle. So, if you're oriented toward the pain and the struggle, you're probably going to be more aligned with what you're capable of accomplishing rather than if you just orient toward the pleasures.
Every worthwhile goal is worthwhile because it has a cost associated with it. And so the cost that you're going through is what makes the goal worthwhile to begin with. Because if what were setting out to do were immediately available to you, then it would mean it would be immediately available to everyone, which means it wouldn't be worthwhile. So the very fact that it's difficult is why it is worth doing.
Cards you got dealt are the cards you got dealt. At some point, you got to go with what you got, or you're not going to go. So you do what you need to do.
Whatever you're going through, man, you're on your fucking own.
Loneliness is a kind of tax we have to pay to atone for a certain complexity of mind. The most important question to ask yourself is, what pain are you willing to endure in your life, rather than what pleasure do you want? Because any pleasure or any pursuit that you want is going to come with an in-kind payment of pain.
Hard work is the goal. And so it's not like work hard so that X, because as soon as you have a so that, then the X is the thing. But if the goal is to work as hard as you possibly can, then the only real output we have is who we become along the way. Something that I learned from a guy who owned 13 or 14 really successful gyms, and he called it open to goal. They work open until they hit their goal. And so sometimes that means they hit their goal by noon and they can cut out. Or that means that they have to go from 5 a.m. until midnight that night, because that's how long it took them to hit the goal. I'll keep shooting free shots until I hit 100 free shots. I will run until this happens. I will practice my presentation until I do 0 mess ups, right? Or whatever that output is that you want for quality or quantity. The best days of my life were ones when I had nothing left in the tank. And so then the goal becomes to empty the tank, not where I drive, but just to drive the car as hard as I possibly can. And that means that in the beginning, it's just straightaways and just seeing how high I can rev the engine. But as I become more advanced, it's like, all right, well, now we've got turns, and then it's turns in elevation, and then it's turns in elevation without guardrails because we have risk. And so when I think about how hard I want to work, the interesting thing about that is that the only person who can judge you on your success is you, because you're the only one who knows how much left in the tank you really had.
This fucking next 18 months, it took me 18 fucking months to finally become a Navy SEAL, to finally, just get through butts. 18 months, it's 6 months, it took me 18. That's what woke me up every fucking morning, was I'm gonna put myself through this much fucking pain and suffering for a few seconds. That's all it is. A few seconds of joy.
you can try to be lucky and pick the one perfect thing and try and make it. But if you don't want to try and be lucky, you can just do so much fucking work that you will brute force your way to figuring it out. Like if you do 1,000 podcasts, you'll be pretty fucking good at podcasts, right? But if you try to say, okay, you're brand new, and all you have to do is make one perfect podcast. The problem is that you don't have the perspective from which to make a judgment to say what is good. It's like, oh, you need your 8 hours of sleep, or you need your morning routine, or if you don't have your supplements, you're just totally fucked. Or like, I didn't have my coffee this morning, so I can't function. Like, I love to compete against people like that because they're so easy to break.
This is the discomfort that everybody feels, whether you're launching a business or doing personal development or doing all the rest of it. And as opposed to thinking about it as a bug, think about it as a feature. And as opposed to thinking about it as something that's a personal curse that's difficult, think about it as the selection criteria that everybody has to get over. Why are so few people in shape? Because going to the gym and sticking to the gym is difficult. Maybe it's a tiny bit easier for some people that like it than others, but for most people, most of the time, it's really, really hard. The cost of doing business, right? This is just the cost of doing business, and I need to pay it.
Why isn't this working when I am working? But if you define work, at least the way I do, which is output. So I define work by output. And in order to get output, it's volume times leverage. So how many times you do the thing times how much you get for each time you do it. And so that is do you work smart or do you work hard? It's you do both. You do as many reps as you possibly can. The distance that we can shrink between wanting to do something or thinking something should be done and it being done is a direct indication of our personal power in our lives. Waking up and then trying to shrink the time between when I wake up and when I start working, and shrinking the time between one task and the next task. Like, you don't need to take 30 minutes of getting ready to start working. Like, you can just start working, because as soon as you get into it, you start pulling the thread and you're like, oh, so if I make 100 calls, I might get 10 times more. And so I worked more. I had more output than somebody who has less skill. But the only way you get skilled is by doing more inputs, by working more. And so it's this virtuous cycle of doing more and getting better, and then you get more for what you do.
This is hard work. This is an obsession. Nothing can beat hard work.
You work as hard as you possibly can because you thought ahead of time, what is the input that has the closest correlation with the outcome that I want? And then you put your blinders on and you start digging.
We don't rise to the standards we have when others are watching. We fall to the standards we have when no one is watching. The only work that really matters is the work that no one sees. It shows you who you really are rather than who you say you are.
No one's watching, which means now you have to work, because otherwise you're full of shit. And the only way that I can do that is know that when no one's watching, I work harder than when they're watching. The only point is working hard, because I know that whatever I'm going to get is stuff that I will become accustomed to. Because I know that when I look back on my life, the days that I loved the most were days when I had nothing left in the tank. And so in reframing that, then it's something that I can win or measure myself against every day in real time throughout the day, which is how hard am I working? Because that is the goal.
In the short term, your success depends on your intensity. In the long term, your success depends on your consistency. Do not sacrifice the latter for the former.
Champions just interpret anxiety as excitement. And the more times you do what is required to get what you want, the more times you get what you want. Measure in hundreds of hours. How many hundreds of hours have you put towards something? If you do that, I promise you the thing that you're making will get a lot better. And you'll also see how much more you're capable of, because then the path gets lit of where you're going to go, because you're so singularly focused and you know you have no other distractions. The attention cost you're not paying that down anymore.
I truly believe we are all equal as human beings. If we are obsessed with something and we truly pursue our passion with everything we have, regardless of anything else, if you are obsessed, work hard and put in the time, you will succeed.
Heroes and villains always have the same backstory, pain. The difference is what they choose to do about it. Villain says, the world hurt me, I'll hurt it back. The hero says, the world hurt me, I'm not going to let it hurt anybody else. Heroes use pain, villains are used by it.
That's a fear that some people run away from, that people don't want to face. When you have a real fear of dying and being just another person, that I live to pay the bills. I made $1,000 a month. This is my life. I spray for cockroaches, man. If that makes you feel good, that's great. It didn't make me feel good.
But the world belongs to those who can continue to work without seeing the result of their work.
if you remind yourself, these are the golden years.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
this
dude.
right now,
Yeah.
this, when you look back, these will be the golden years.
People get really obsessed with optimal, which is getting the most bang for your buck. But there's also maximizing, which is just getting the most bucks. You lose more life trying to optimize everything than just living it. The stress of trying to be perfect is killing you more quickly than your imperfections.
Just the idea that we become so overly romantic around these things that sometimes you just have to break shit. And sometimes you have to be violent. And sometimes when you're on your journey, you're not going to sleep much.
What has helped me has been me alone, getting my shit together and being accountable for who I'm not and who I want to be.
The opportunity to commit yourself fully to something that you care about is beyond a blessing. And when you do it, the way that you feel once you know that you've worked hard is great.
I'm trying to give people a different thought process of life where failure, hell, disappointment, discomfort is a great learning tool.
Work as hard as you can at one thing for a year and see what happens.
Most people walk around parroting other people's words for the vast majority of their lives. And so they basically act as recorders where they clicked record at one point of their life and then they click play at another time in their life and they're just clicking record, play, record, play, record, play over and over again. Like there's just a lot of these social norms that people, usually pass down to us or they're, bred into us in high school and college and things like that. But it's like you see a guy who, wears a cowboy hat and dresses a certain way and he basically wants to say, I am this archetype of person. But if cowboy boots aren't as comfortable for you as New Balances are, and you know that and you still wear cowboy boots, I would call you a fraud. If you have a belief and you can't explain why you believe it, it's not yours, it's someone else's. And in my opinion, that other self that's behind it is because none of those words are yours. People feel alone and they feel like they're acting because they never say what they think. And as a result, they also sound like everyone else because they were never themselves to begin with. I think most people have the potential to be exceptional, and because most people are peculiar in their own way. They just stifle that because they want to be accepted by most people, but in so doing, never accomplish what they want to do because they conform.
But if you think someone's ruined your life, you're right. It's you.
And so it hurts, but if you turn the finger inwards and you start saying, I don't like my life. The person that I need to punish or get back at is the real person who got me here, which is me. It's like the best way to guarantee to not have the life that you want is to do what everyone else is doing. Unless you want what everyone else has, which no one does. If life is a long journey of self-acceptance, I think the earlier you can accept your own peculiarities as just part of you, rather than trying to justify them or mold to the archetype that you think is acceptable within your social circle.
A friendly reminder that in 3 generations, everyone who knew us will be dead, including the people whose opinions stopped you from doing what you wanted all along. Imagine that someone you know achieves every dream and hits every goal they have. Years later, they get old and die. 2 years after that, how much do you care? About as much as everyone else will if you accomplish your goals and dreams. Do it for you.
You accept outcomes and you accept circumstances. You accept the fact that you were dealt whatever hand you were dealt. You accept that you're 5'8". You accept that you're black. You accept that you're a woman. That's accepting. You trying to rebel against that is you trying to fight the universe, and the universe is going to win every time. You can accept that the work that you have done has created the outcome that you've created. But you do not need to accept that the outcome that you've created is the end-all be-all and the last outcome that you need to have.
Do you want to accept a version of you that you shouldn't accept? One that you're not proud of, one that doesn't live up to their word, one whose thoughts, actions, and intentions aren't aligned fully. You go, well, I mean, I can, but I don't particularly feel good about that. That feels like the higher version of me, the potential version of me that I want to live up to I'm sort of derogating them, that this isn't really the tribute to them that it should be.
Is there a version of yourself that's better than you are right now? And most people, hopefully, would say yes. It's like, great, accept that person. And I think people wildly underestimate how many shots on goal you can take when you have nothing to lose. Whereas when someone has something to lose, they have to be more and more selective about the shots they take. And so you have the perfect conditions for taking risk, because the worst case scenario is baseline, is where you're currently at. which means that it's like going to the casino and playing craps, but they say that you can just keep playing until you win. But people are afraid to roll. I think most people feel really lonely when you want something that doesn't currently exist. And so some people call that dreams, some people call that goals, whatever it is, you're trying to pull something from your mind into reality and you want it done a certain way. And if it's not done that way, it's not what you imagined. And so people on the outside will throw stones and call you names that they think will change your behavior and get you to stop. Everybody, when I was sleeping on the gym floor, right? Like, you know, I was the underdog, and everyone, you know, my clients were all like, "Oh, good for you. You know, you're going after your dream." They'd see my blanket and my pillow in the corner of the gym, and they knew I was sleeping there, and it was evident. You know, I lived there. I didn't have a shower to go to the YMCA to go shower. That everybody was like pro me, and then people would come in, they sign up like, I'm gonna support you, right? And then within 9 months, I had hired people and I had a manager, and I pulled up. And I remember I walked in the lobby and all the same people were like, "Oh, boss man's here. Oh, you're not too good for us now, right?" And I remember being so jarred by the experience. And I was like, "You guys rooted for me." And I was like, and now I did what you said you were rooting for me to do. And that was when I realized that people want you to do well, but not better than them. There's this period of discomfort when you change anything because everyone around you wants you to fit within the label that they are comfortable with.
But they also have the anchor of what you were before.
Yeah, exactly. And so they try and like, they people don't like that. And so they're like, no, I like you in this box. So just say, I know you're having a little thing right now. Don't worry. Just, and they just want to shove you back into it. I think everyone else is wrong. And everyone's like, "You're an idiot." And you're like, "I think you're wrong." And that's okay. You know what I mean? And it's just, most people can't do that. Just the idea of being weird is too much.
You're scared of humiliation. You're scared of saying, "I want to do great things," and then not doing great things. But I would argue saying you want to do great things and not doing great things is better than just not doing anything and not saying anything. Give it a crack. You can have anything. You can't have everything. You can work for anything in life.
You take the period of time, you go on the untrodden path, you have people reject you and say, "Oh, you're not coming out tonight, you're going to the gym again," right? "Oh, can't eat with us," right? She's on a diet again. How long are you going to stick with this one, right? Because the thing is that the stick to it muscle itself is something that you work on. Because if you started diets and you failed, and you started working out and you failed, if you just make it longer every time before you fail, you're still making progress and you're still doing something that everyone else isn't doing. And so there's this huge time delay between when we start behaving in a way that a winner behaves and when we start winning. And the problem is that the bigger the mountain you're trying to climb, the bigger the W you're trying to get, typically the more delayed it is between the lag. Yeah, between when you start behaving like a winner and when you start being a winner. And most people don't get the fast enough feedback loop to know that they're on the right path when they are taking these first steps in the right direction, because they have this really big goal, but they forget that with that really big goal comes the even longer delay that it takes to get there, while still continuing to act with no feedback from society.
No positive reinforcement
whatsoever. The more you master any skill, the more ways you can win. And that's ultimately what makes the rich get richer, is that because everything is so positively reinforcing, because they start to develop skills, then they do more and more of it. And as they do more of it, the rich get richer, the better get better, the better become best. And then everyone who's starting out is like, how on God's earth does this guy have this work ethic? But it's really that he has high levels of skill. The hard times are a requisite for success. And so if you're going through hard times right now, it means that you're on the path to success. And it's not that you're on the wrong path. It's the feeling of being on the right path. If it's the first time you're going through it, you can't recognize the signs because you don't have anything to compare it to. If there was a big meta indicator that you're doing the right thing, doing what everyone isn't doing is already probably the single biggest indicator that you're doing the right thing. People criticize because it helps them justify the risks they chose not to take, in the hopes that it'll dissuade you from doing it so that you can be in the exact same position as them, which then justifies that they made the right call. Hatred isn't something you avoid. It is a requisite for success. No one hates you from above. You get no hate, you are not successful.
No comedians are jealous of how I got it. No one sits there and goes, I wish I could sit for 10 hours a day and write jokes. They think I want to play that venue or I'd love to have that Netflix special, but they don't sit there going, well, what pathology would you need in your head to write that many one-liners and to care that much about it? Who would you have to be to do that?
But just thinking about it as an indicator that the hate is actually the light that you're on the right path. Because they're projecting the things that they know they should be doing, that you are doing, that they're not doing. And you remind them of that. You quitting drinking, or you staying in to work on your side hustle or your project or the business that you want to launch, or the podcast, you might be at the top of their mountain. And so they are tearing you down because now you remind them that they haven't done it. And it's purely a projection of them onto you and has nothing to do with you. I think that everyone has a personal brand that is unique and different, but everyone doesn't look that way because they conform to what they think everyone else wants them to look like. And so
it comes down to truly valuing your opinion of yourself more than other people's opinion of you.
After a while, people start to give you these different taglines, like you're superhuman, you're amazing. I'm like, you fuckers don't know anything about me, man. Like, I'm this insecure kid. And I started realizing there's a lot of people out here who are going through a lot of problems.
Find the others. Admit it. You aren't like them. You're not even close. You may occasionally dress yourself up as one of them, watch the same mindless television shows as they do, maybe even eat the same fast food sometimes. But it seems that the more you try to fit in, the more you feel like an outsider. Control freak is a word people with low standards use to describe people with high standards. You're not a control freak. Do not expect mediocre people to support world-class goals.
the sign of success is the hate that you get along the way. And what you can't do is bend the knee to their hate and fit back into the conformity because it's comfortable and it's warm.
So when you start to really level up, when you start to really do what's best for you, you start to make more money, you get a better job, you get healthier, whatever it is, you can't bring the people around you with you. If they're not willing to walk beside you, push you along, motivate you, and do everything that needs to be done, do exactly what you're doing, and then some, that way you guys motivate each other back and forth, you can never go back. Whenever you leave, a town, a job, a relationship, a friendship, whatever it is, you can't go back to it. Because where you've probably elevated as a person, you've leveled up your life, you've maybe you've left some situation or a relationship and you started working on your mental, physical, and financial health, really dove deep into personal development, got real spiritual or whatever it is. There's no sense in turning around and going back, because it's very likely that that person or that place or those people stayed the same.
Many people want to be exceptional, but they're afraid of being an exception. I think it's such a, it's wanting an outcome without the requirement that the outcome has. And so we can't do the same thing that everyone else approves of and then somehow get a different outcome that everyone else does. The leading indicator of a successful person is the ability to act without anything happening. And when you continue down that path, it happens slower than you expect and then faster than you can imagine. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the part that everyone misses, is they expect the faster than they can imagine and they imagine really big. And so then their expectations are really big, really fast, but they take the intensity and they don't apply it to a timeline that's appropriate. One of my most powerful motivational frames is thinking about the person that I want to become as the destination, and thinking like, I want to be bulletproof. I want to be bulletproof in these ways. I want to be bulletproof in my marriage. I want to be bulletproof in my business, etc. And I think about that man, whoever I want him to be. Like we said, hell is when you look at who you could have been and realize that you're not that person. And then I think, if I were to make that man, what would I put that man through to make him who he is? Like, it wouldn't be easy times. It wouldn't be quick wins. It wouldn't even be easy wins. It would be the toil and the struggle of achieving and reaching for things that are right out of grasp. I think it's believing in the 85-year-old version of you, who's exactly who you want to be, and then ruthlessly looking at the discrepancy between the pittance of a human that you are now compared to that man or that woman, and then step by step breaking down the many differences and starting on the first one and pulling the thread.
A lot of people think their life is terrible because there's kind of the hedonic treadmill. You get used to how great your life is. No one had a hot shower until 50 years ago. Well, look, when you stand in a hot shower, just for a moment, just go, well, no one that you admire from 100 years ago had this simple pleasure in life. And when you look at the world that we live in, we're like, there's been 100 billion people ever, right? We are in the top percentile in terms of the luck that we have had. The lives, like the calorific intake that we just take for granted, the fact that our children don't die, in the first year, the modern medicine and our lives and the entertainment that we get. We're living like kings. Time's going to pass whatever you do, and you can give yourself gifts in the future. You can be rich, and you can have a six-pack, and you can be successful, and you can be in a happy long-term relationship with a beautiful family. You can give yourself those gifts, but there's some tough times in the present to give yourself that gift in the future. You're giving yourself a better character because you're giving yourself a challenge, right? We all need the challenge. So it's like, with any kind of mythological story, what are people going to say at your eulogy? That's the important thing. That's the stuff that really matters. And it's a very different, it's a hidden metric of what are people going to say at your funeral. What are people going to say when you pass? I think you would give me everything you own in 25 years' time to be the age you are now and as healthy as you are right now. If you had a time machine, if you were 30 years in the future, if you could be this healthy and feel this good and be this age, you'd give everything materially that you own in 30 years' time to be back here.